So today we're going to look at something that anybody can sell. Anybody can do this. This is an antique. This is a new item. This is a craft item. This covers every gambit you could imagine. This is super, super easy. Hey, it's Don. Today we're going to talk about something that is available to anybody. It's an antique item, it's an NOS item, it's a new item, it's a craft item. It can be sold all over the place. Now here's a couple examples of what we're talking about. Now these may not look like much. They're just basically, I guess, chalkware fish. Now it's not just fish we are talking about either. There are a ton of different things like this you can sell. Now we're going to look at some of them in just a few minutes here and show you an inside secret at the very end. So if you want to know how you can get into this type of area, even if you can't find the vintage or old ones, we're going to show you. Here's a prime example of a grouping of these. Now these will turn up at estate sales, auctions, flea markets. I've even seen them at garage sales, believe it or not. Church sales are really good for these sorts of items too. Now these can be repaired as well. It's just plaster. So there isn't really much to fixing some of these if you know what you're doing. People repaint these all the time. We're going to show you some really interesting things at the very end of this video that might open your eyes to a whole new idea with some of these sorts of items. Now this is typically of what you'll find. You'll find some fish, like a little school of them, with bubbles. The ones that are opalescent are the ones that are a little earlier from my personal experience, at least from the ones that I've personally run into. You can see the price. There is an interest in these sorts of things as well. They're all about the same. Some of them are not painted as well as other ones, but these aren't bad. This is typical. I think the lighting makes them look a little dull, but I bet you they're opalescent as well. Here's a nice example as well where it's 3 different sizes of fish and 3 different sizes of bubbles. This is typical too. Every one of these designs we're showing you here, you can find in many different color varieties. We'll look at one and we'll show you multiple different colored versions of the very same designed fish in just a moment here. Now, many of these designs were around for a very long time. I do believe there were kits you could order from Sears and JCPenney's at one time that came with some molding material and you could actually make your own at one time. So there are some versions of these that are a little newer. There are some that specialize just from specific places, just like toys or anything else like that. So they still sell 60, 70 bucks for lots like this. Now here's the very same fish we just looked at, but a boxed version with a whole different pattern on it. This is typical of what you would find. Many times the actual fish are just glued to the back of the box. I've actually had to remove them a few times from the cardboard that they were sold in, just like this. But as I said, the pattern and design can be found in so many different varieties. One of the biggest companies who did this as well is Miller, and this even says Miller wall plaque. This is typical again of what you will see in the box. Now here's one of the most popular ones, and this is actually a takeoff of something we'll show you towards the end as well. The highest price selling chalkware ceramic figure like this, fish-wise, we'll show you, and it's something that may surprise some of you. This is a lovely one. This is one of my wife's favorites, actually. It kind of is iridescent with multicolored, so it does look like a bubble, almost like a champagne color with translucent greenish glare and glisten on it. This one with a couple of the bubbles usually sells for about $75 to $125, depending on how many bubbles and how nice the fish looks. Here's the very same one in the package. Now, one thing I should say on this, most people will assume the one in the package sells for the most. That's usually not what I run into. The used, the open, the out-of-the-package ones will sell for just as much, if not more, sometimes than the packaged ones. Most of the time what I see when someone buys one of these in the packages, they remove it and they hang it on the wall. These are meant to be hung on a wall, and most people do actually like to see them on a wall. Now they made some cute ones, and then they made these here, these bass, these sports fish ones. So this could go in a den or in a hunting lodge or something like that as well. It's another example of the variety they made of these. Some of these have more of a realistic looking paint job on them as well. Now let me show you just a few of the varieties of the coloring schemes you can find. This is a boxed pink set. One of the more popular ones. The fish are looking dead on at you. Now here's another version of these, but this one's pink with black tips and gilt, gold paint on it. Same price scheme. Again, the price, whether it's in the box or out of the box, does not seem to matter much at all in this category. Here's the same one in orange. Here's the same one in green. Now, most of the time, they're also in a pair or in a family grouping. Here's a pair. It's a couple. This one went for 85 bucks as well. Sometimes you run into some that, again, have that iridescent paint job to them in various different styles, even with this same design. Now, here's a lot of them. This is one of those cases where I would always split these up. The couple usually sells in good condition for 50 to 75 bucks easily on its own. Starfish, we'll show you in a minute, can sell just as well, just separately even. Here's another example. Now, the color scheme can make a difference in the value. The pinks and the blues of the 50s and early 60s are some of the more desirable ones. Some of these later coloring schemes here, like this one, isn't quite as popular. It's not as cutesy, and it's not quite as realistic either. They still do sell for some decent money, though, as you see. Now, here's a very nice example of a pair of seahorses. There's a ton of different types of animals. I've seen crabs, seahorses, starfish, various different shells, including conches. So you'll see them with the bubbles and sometimes without. This lot here, these are probably a little smaller. This sold for 45 bucks, as you can see. So regardless, if this was in a different color, say pink, it would have probably went for more money. The pink and the lighter baby blue turquoise are the ones that usually dominate the high end of these categories. Now, this is probably the most expensive chalkware fish that you will find, and a takeoff on the one we showed you earlier. This is Cleo from Walt Disney's Pinocchio, and it's actually a string holder. In the back, you'd put a spool of string, and then it comes through Cleo's mouth. Let's see if we can find an example. That's where it is in the back. There's an opening in the inside. There's a ton of different varieties of these, and they made them for the actual movie as well. This does look to be the original ones. There's recreations of these as well. You'll find them for all different sorts of characters. I've seen a Popeye very recently out in the wild even, so I know they're still out there. 150 bucks. Again, this is probably the highest one of the fish that you'll run into. Now, this is a licensed Disney product. Now, in the beginning, as I said, there weren't just fish involved in this. This is fruits and vegetables. There's probably 100 different styles, designs of these. I've seen Scotty dogs and various other animals done with caricatures, with caricature faces like this. These are fairly common. They do sell. This is a decent lot. These are smaller, though, not as big as some of the fish, especially the fish that I showed you. The bigger they are, usually the more expensive they go. It's still sold for a reasonable amount, 11-something each, usually found in a lot when I find these in the wild. And yet, here's another example. Now, these two sold for roughly 20 bucks a piece. The paint job makes a difference, the style, the face, and how good condition it actually is. Usually the hook on the back is just the wire that's been sunk into the actual plaster chalkware itself. So it's embedded into this. Now, before we finish off, let me show you this as well. This is actually a vacuum-formed mold of some of the fruit characters that are out there. Now, these are not the licensed ones by some of the manufacturing companies we showed you, but these are ones that you can actually copy because there are no patents, trademarks, or anything on these. This is something I personally bought. The price sticker is actually $1, and it is still on there. Now, I've got a bunch of these for many different items. These are the exact same ones you will run into from the 40s and 50s of these same anthropomorphic fruits, painted in all different types of whimsical faces. They all have eyes, they all have mouths, nose, the whole works. Now, you can turn these up as well, and these will sell for some good money. You could make your own. Somebody put these on a vacuum table and suck down the actual molding material on top of it. Now, if I get a lot of comments about the mold aspect of it, I may make a video showing how to make your own molds like this. There's nothing to it once you get the mold either to actually cast this in plaster. You can airbrush them. You can use a spray can to get the main colors on. There's a lot of stuff you can do with these. And these sell all the time as long as they're done properly. Now, keeping in mind what we've shown you and the molding options that there are for this, these are brand new ones. Somebody found the mold, or they actually took a mold of some originals. It's very easy to do. You can vacuum form a mold from the originals and then make copies of them from there. Somebody made brand new versions of these. This is just a couple dollars worth of plaster with a tiny piece of wire stuck in the back on each one of these, and then somebody has painted them. You can turn this into an assembly line process and make a whole bunch of these in one day. They can be sold on almost any site out there, as long as you get ones that aren't copyrighted by Miller or anybody else. You've got to get the no-name generic versions, because those were available to the general public, as I said earlier, in kits, and they were meant to be cast and made. You just have to make sure that you're not violating anybody's copyrights. Well, there we have it. Hopefully that gave you some ideas, some thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button down below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified if I post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell all your friends.
Is there another planet with a cereal as big as honeycomb?
Inhabitant of Vesuvius!
The starship Honeycomb.
Our cereal is bigger than yours.
Impossible, Earthlings.
We'll prove it.
If you fail, you're doomed.
This is our cereal.
And this is honeycomb.
Ah, Honeycomb's big and it's got a big bite.
Post honeycomb cereal's part of a balanced breakfast.
Take honeycomb for your planet.
My people will love the big bite.
Is there another planet with a cereal as big as honeycomb?